Show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
Welcome in this new year of the Club of Amsterdam, and we're going to start with some very nice introduction. I hope you, the coming year, you will realize all your dreams. We will do some philosophy on business issues. I'm Humberto Schwab from the Socratic Design Academy. I am a physicist and philosopher, and always try to combine physics and philosophy to find new ways of provoking change. And change, I mean changing humans, organizations, governments, institutions, or businesses alike. We all want to have change because that's what it's all the past year. If you look in January 2018, there were a lot of trends predicted for the year 2018, and most of it didn't happen. Why is it? Because we want a lot of change, we see a lot of technology, but we are unable to really implement the change. Why is that? Well, that's the subject of today, and we need philosophy to realize real change. Something, of course, the Googles and the Facebooks knows, because these guys secretly have done a master in philosophy. And they know you have, for real new narratives, for real new opportunities, you need a new concepts. And new concepts cannot arise from the old thinking. Like Einstein said, the thinking that produced all these problems cannot be the same thinking that will produce the solutions. Well, anyway, we will not solve problems in Socratic Design. We will create complete new perspectives, which is different than solving problems. We will see that solving problems basically lead to continuous the whole origin of the problems, but then in a mitigating way. Socratic Design, what we're going to talk about now, is a way to realize that the world is designed and not an evolutionary product. It is designed, but not by God. That was the contradiction between the designers and the evolution theorists, but it is a design by humans themselves. So we live in our own narrative, which is quite horrible to know, because we thought we lived in reality, which is not true. I have to disappoint you. But in order to change, we have to change our way of thinking, we have to change our philosophical assumptions, and we have to change our way of cooperating and working together. In the thinking way, most of you, because you are members of a network, a very intelligent network, most of you assume that you are thinking most of the time. Here I have to disappoint you that human beings most of the time are not thinking, but in their mechanism they think that they are thinking, which is the cause of a lot of problems. Because if you know that you're not thinking, the problem is less than when you think you are thinking, but actually are not thinking. How does that work? Well, this is thanks to David Bohm, a neuroscientist and a physicist, a philosopher and a physicist, I have to say, who discovered that we think not with our brain, but we have an embodied mind. So we think with our body. And our body means the whole neurological complex organs, your stomachs, your neurons, your spinal, your amygdala, and all that very complex departments in this very complex system. But one of the strongest things in this thinking mind and body system are the hormones and the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters, if you look at evolution, are the key to understand why we developed. Because it gave us stimulation for things that were good for the offspring. So that worked out in evolution. So that's why we have addiction in our thoughts. Addiction in our thoughts are the same addictions we had when we watched a tiger. When we watched the tiger in the savannah, it was very essential to have this image repeat it over and over again so that you don't need the next time to think, oh, it's yellow, it's running, it has a big mouth, oh, it must be a tiger. It's very important that the idea of the thought of a tiger directly goes into your system. So this is addictive thought. And it gives you a dopamine. And this dopamine release related to thoughts is completely mind-blowing, because it means that we are not rational agents, that all the thoughts, which is the past tense in English, very beautiful grammatically, the past tense of thinking, but all your thoughts are related to the addictive release of dopamine. So basically you will produce always the same thoughts, but it gives you the impression that you are thinking because you get nice dopamine release. And also it fits in your whole frame. So when you are in a meeting with people, you know almost if you are regularly a member of a board or a commission or a group, everybody almost is very sure what he is going to say when he gets the floor, then what she is going to say, etc., etc. We know what people are going to say because we know from other people they are addicted to their thoughts. But it's difficult to observe that in your own thought. The same we have with feelings. Feelings, we say, I feel this, so it must be real. Mostly feelings are felt 20 years ago and repeated in an addictive way. So people can have felt about themselves like, I'm very stupid, or I'm very intelligent. I feel this very strongly. Or that people attack me, because that happened when I was bullied at school. And that can be repeated all your life as an addictive felt. A lot of CEOs are basically exercising their children response in different defense mechanisms during their whole life. So they feel attacked because it was the case when they were 5, and this attacked feeling system will be so addictive that they will see it everywhere around them, and this can be very productive to rise up in hierarchies. So there's a lot of addictive thought and addictive assumptions in our own embodied mind. So it makes it very interesting to investigate yourself, to liberate you from patterns that are not the actual you. And another point why change is so difficult is that we do not know, mostly, in what sort of swimming pool we are moving. We are moving in a swimming pool based on some philosophical assumptions. I give you a few one. The first one is that people need property, something that everybody takes for granted. People think that everyone is an egoist, which has also been taken for granted even in high school. And people think that they are separated, a brain and body system, so that they are a rational agent. All our economic system is based on these 3 assumptions, which were developed by philosophers. So basically, who is working in your mind is Thomas Hobbes. Nobody knows this, except of course some philosophers, but it's a little bit strange that you don't know who is steering inside you, while you always say, I think this, I think that. Well, basically, the thoughts have entered in your system, and these are the philosophical assumptions. Now, that's why we need philosophy to detect the philosophical assumptions in persons and to eliminate them to get us free of this mostly wrong assumption. So another very strong one is that theoretical abstract thinking is higher, more real than manual craftsman or using your hands. Even it used to be dirty if somebody worked with the hands, you wouldn't touch this person because that was a layman. Well, these assumptions are very essential. They provoked the industrial era and they provoked a lot of industrial outcome and benefit. But now we are facing the results, and some people say that we are facing end of the world. Well, what we can say is we need to find other ways of creating our narrative. How do we do this if our thoughts are addictive? If we don't know the philosophical assumptions And worst of all, that we cannot listen. So in meetings, most of the meetings in your company you can skip. It saves you a lot of money because most of the time, most of the people are not listening, although they act as if. Even they believe themselves that they are listening. What they take in from the information is mostly exactly what was already in their brain or in their mind. So even psychologists discovered that people will maintain their interpretation of a meeting even when they show them videos that say the opposite. Then people will say, when this was decided, the video was not playing. So we are very, very stubborn in ourselves, locked up in ourselves. So the individual society, the autonomous society, even increases this locked up ID. So if you want to come to change, you have to leave this beside, because all these effects that I named were all related to a lot of chronic problems and conflicts we have in the world, because we're not listening, we repeat our assumption, we suggest that we are listening, and we repeat our faults in an addictive way, so impossible to grow together to a new step. So what we have to do is go back to Socrates and use the philosophical reflection to leave our egos behind and come to a very sort of collective wisdom. And this collective wisdom you can reach by a disciplined Socratic dialogue methodology. In a Socratic dialogue, you're not free to discuss. The word discussion means hitting somebody on the head, on the plate. In a Socratic dialogue, we bring you, with an authoritative way, we bring you in the listening mode. So you will get thoughts of other people in your head because you are forced to repeat them. This way you will experience, your brain system will experience complete new thoughts in its whole chamber. And that will provoke already some creative moments. But the stronger thing of this exercise of group listening is that we focus everybody on the same question. Mostly we always search for solutions of problems, but as I said, if you look for a solution of problems, you probably will prolongate all the assumptions, all the problems, all the language, what was sticked to the old narrative. What we need to do is stick together and find a way of asking together questions. And the asking of the question is a very strong way to come to the burning question for a company or for persons or a family or a government. In companies, you can understand that people are very fragmented in departments. They have, always the same routines, so they are even addicted to routines, and they have also the same images of one another. When we break this and we come to a collective attention, then we have the possibility of change, because what we do in this collective attention, we ask the question and we start from other values, the values that we together assume as important. Because we have worked the past 100 years on the assumptions that values will come at the end of the day. When you have done everything, then you do an ethical check. What we discover now, that people are not rational agents, but they are impregnated with values. People are impregnated with motivation. So that's where we always have to find the bonding. So this methodology starts with the values, starts with what is our common question, and creates, so you can say, a purpose. And purpose-driven companies, purpose-driven schools, purpose-driven families, but also purpose-driven people are the happiest one in the world, because they even would move without money, because the purpose gives them not a dopamine satisfaction, but it gives them a serotonin satisfaction, and the serotonin is the higher level of our neocortex here, and mostly we use only the dopamine part, it's the reptile part. So when you're eating chips or you're watching Facebook or Netflix, it's all dopamine, and that's mostly what we do the most part of the day. But if we succeed in connecting with the serotonin, we come to a higher level of intelligence and wisdom. And with that, we connect, which is very important, with the common tacit ground. So the tacit ground of where do we come from? Because we act as if we lived the past 100 years in the modern times, but people existed for 150,000 years, and all this sort of reactions, tribal needs, or communicative skills, or aesthetics, evaluation capacities are from the first times of mankind are still in us. So if we have this collective tribal attention, we will also connect to our authentic needs, which was one of the biggest problems at this moment, that people find a burnout because they have their consumer needs, but it seems it doesn't satisfy their existential needs. So even for business, it's becoming very dangerous that in lots of people getting in a burnout situation. So we have to motivate people again, get them into a value-connected bonding in a purpose, but we can only reach that when we jump out of our old narrative. And to jump out of the old narrative, the nice thing is that we can follow collective attention, but intensively collective attention, not the ritual dancing, but really the art of philosophical listening to one another, and that will produce deep driven change. And well, is this the truth? Is this, because there's a lot of consultancy, always methodologies. Well, basically philosophy is the only discipline that presents its methodology and says, and we have to confirm this methodology ourselves. So the participants in the Socratic Design process will confirm or negate this process, and that is the construction of our truth. So we have to give a lot of wisdom back to the practical people who are in the core of any activity, and leave behind the idea that higher level abstract thinkers will give orders to the lower level handmen and laymen. To end this, why is this such a strong movement? Why is it so motivated? It's not only because we get a social bonding, but in the underlying effect is the unity between the aesthetics and the ethics, the beautiful stuff, the good stuff, and you can say the truth. Plato said it, but if you experience this unity, it's so motivating that you really come to other levels of knowledge. That's why I wish you this year a process of knowing yourself, because knowing yourself will bring you to the elimination of artificial ego and to the level of good connection to create real transformative change. Thank you.